The alarm clock buzzed loudly at 5:30 in the morning. Marcus Johnson reached over and turned it off with a gentle tap. He had been waking up at this time for 15 years. His body was used to it now. Marcus sat up on the edge of his bed and stretched his arms above his head. The house was quiet and peaceful. His wife Sarah was still sleeping beside him. She worked the evening shift at the local hospital, so she got to sleep in a little longer. Marcus walked to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He was 52 years old, but he still looked strong and healthy. His dark hair had some gray streaks now, but his brown eyes were still bright and alert. He splashed cold water on his face to wake himself up completely. Then he brushed his teeth and got ready for another day at work. In the kitchen, Marcus made himself a simple breakfast: 2 pieces of toast with butter and a cup of black coffee. He liked to keep things simple in the morning. While he ate, he looked out the window at the quiet neighborhood. The sun was just starting to come up and paint the sky with soft orange and pink colors. A few birds were singing in the trees outside. It was going to be a beautiful day. After breakfast, Marcus put on his security guard uniform. The dark blue shirt was clean and pressed. His badge was polished and shiny. He attached his radio to his belt along with his flashlight and keys. Marcus took pride in looking professional at work. He believed that when you looked good, you felt good, and when you felt good, you did good work. Marcus drove his old pickup truck to Westfield Shopping Plaza. The roads were mostly empty at this early hour. Only a few other early workers were heading to their jobs. The radio played soft music as he drove through the quiet streets. Marcus enjoyed this peaceful time before the busy day began. It gave him time to think and prepare himself mentally for whatever challenges might come. When Marcus arrived at the mall, the parking lot was almost empty. Only a few cars belonged to the cleaning crew and early store employees. The mall looked different in the early morning light. It seemed bigger and more peaceful without all the shoppers and noise. Marcus parked his truck in the employee section and walked toward the main entrance. The glass doors of Westfield Shopping Plaza reflected the morning sunlight. Marcus could see his reflection as he approached. He looked professional and ready for work. He used his key card to enter through the employee entrance. The mall was quiet inside except for the sound of vacuum cleaners running in some of the stores. The cleaning crew was finishing their work before the stores opened. Marcus walked through the main corridor toward his post near the customer service area. His footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble floor. The mall had a fresh, clean smell from the overnight cleaning. Store employees were starting to arrive and prepare their shops for opening. They waved at Marcus as he passed by. Everyone knew him and respected him. At exactly 7 o'clock, Marcus took his position near the main entrance. This was his favorite spot because he could see everyone who came and went. He could help people find stores or give directions. Sometimes tourists asked him about local restaurants or hotels. Marcus enjoyed helping people and making their day a little bit better. The mall manager, Mr. Thompson, walked by and stopped to chat with Marcus. They talked about the weather and how busy they expected the day to be. Mr. Thompson always appreciated having Marcus on the team. He was reliable and professional. Customers never complained about Marcus. In fact, they often praised him for being helpful and polite. As the morning progressed, more store employees arrived. The coffee shop started brewing their first batch of the day. The sweet smell of fresh coffee began to fill the air. Soon the mall would be full of shoppers looking for deals and spending time with friends and family. Marcus stood at his post ready to help anyone who needed assistance. He had no idea that this ordinary Tuesday morning would soon become one of the most challenging and memorable days of his career. A difficult customer was about to test everything he had learned about patience and professionalism over his 15 years of service. At exactly 10:15 in the morning, the peaceful atmosphere of Westfield Shopping Plaza was about to change dramatically. Marcus was standing at his usual post near the main entrance greeting early shoppers with his warm smile. The mall was getting busier as more people arrived to start their shopping day. Children were laughing as they walked with their parents. Elderly couples moved slowly through the corridors holding hands and enjoying their morning walk. Then the glass doors burst open with unusual force. A woman in her mid-40s stormed through the entrance like a hurricane entering a calm harbor. Her high heels clicked loudly and angrily against the marble floor, making a sharp tapping sound that echoed through the entire corridor. Every step she took seemed to announce that she was not happy about something. This was Linda Patterson, and she was dressed to impress, but not in a good way. She wore an expensive black dress that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week. Her jewelry sparkled under the mall lights. Diamond earrings hung from her ears, and multiple gold bracelets jangled on her wrists. Her purse was a designer brand that most people could only dream of owning. Everything about her appearance screamed money and status. But her face told a completely different story. Linda looked angry and frustrated. Her lips were pressed together in a tight line. Her eyebrows were pulled down into a deep frown. Her eyes were narrow and cold like ice. She looked like someone who was used to getting her way and was not happy when things did not go according to her plans. Marcus noticed her immediately. In his 15 years of working security, he had developed a special sense for spotting trouble before it started. Something about the way Linda moved and the expression on her face told him that this woman was going to cause problems. He straightened his shoulders and prepared himself mentally for whatever was about to happen. Linda marched straight toward the customer service desk near Marcus's post. Her heels continued to click loudly with each angry step. Other shoppers began to notice her too. Some moved out of her way, instinctively sensing that she was not someone they wanted to get in the path of. A few curious people slowed down their walking to see what was going to happen next. Behind the customer service desk stood Sarah Mitchell, a young woman who had been working at the mall for only 6 months. She was 22 years old and still learning how to handle difficult situations. Sarah was organizing some paperwork when she heard the angry footsteps approaching. She looked up with a friendly smile, ready to help another customer with their questions or concerns. Linda reached the counter and immediately slammed something down on the surface with a loud bang. It was a receipt from a clothing store purchase. The sound was so loud that people throughout the entire area turned their heads to see what was happening. Sarah jumped slightly from the sudden noise, but managed to keep her professional composure. Without any greeting or polite introduction, Linda began speaking in a voice that was much too loud for indoor conversation. She demanded a full refund for a dress she had purchased 3 weeks earlier. Her voice carried across the mall corridor, easily reaching the ears of shoppers who were 50 feet away. Some people stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Sarah looked at the receipt and politely explained that the store had a 7-day return policy. The dress had been purchased 21 days ago, which was far beyond the acceptable return period. She spoke in a calm and respectful tone, trying to help Linda understand the store rules. But Linda was not interested in hearing about policies or rules. She wanted what she wanted, and she expected to get it immediately. The confrontation was just beginning, and Marcus could see that this situation was going to require his professional attention very soon. When Sarah explained the 7-day return policy to Linda, the angry woman became even more furious than before. Her face turned red like a tomato and her voice grew louder with each word she spoke. Linda began shouting about how unfair the policy was and how she deserved special treatment because she was an important customer who spent a lot of money at the mall. Linda waved the receipt in the air like a flag and declared that she did not care about any stupid policies. She said that rules were made for ordinary people, not for someone like her who could afford to shop anywhere she wanted. Her voice echoed through the mall corridors, causing many shoppers to stop and stare at the dramatic scene unfolding at the customer service desk. Poor Sarah tried her best to remain calm and professional. She explained that the return policy applied to all customers equally and that she did not have the authority to make exceptions. Sarah suggested that Linda could speak with a store manager when they arrived later in the afternoon. But Linda did not want to wait for anyone. She wanted her money back right now, this very minute. Linda began pacing back and forth in front of the customer service desk like a caged animal. Her high heels clicked rapidly against the floor, creating an angry rhythm that matched her mood. She gestured wildly with her hands and raised her voice even higher. Other customers in the area began moving away from the confrontation. Parents pulled their children closer and elderly shoppers looked uncomfortable and worried. The angry woman started making threats about calling corporate headquarters and filing complaints with the Better Business Bureau. She claimed that she would ruin the reputation of the entire shopping center if she did not get satisfaction immediately. Linda said she had connections with important people who could shut down the whole mall if they wanted to. Her threats became more and more dramatic as her anger continued to build. Marcus watched the situation carefully from his position near the entrance. He could see that Sarah was becoming overwhelmed by Linda's aggressive behavior. The young woman was trying to handle the situation professionally, but it was clear that she needed help. Other store employees had started gathering nearby pretending to work, while actually watching the confrontation develop. Linda suddenly noticed Marcus standing in his security uniform about 20 feet away. Her angry eyes focused on him like a laser beam targeting its next victim. She pointed her finger directly at him and began walking in his direction. The clicking of her heels grew louder as she approached, and her face showed even more anger than before. When Linda reached Marcus, she looked him up and down with obvious disgust and disapproval. She seemed to think that security guards were beneath her social status and should automatically do whatever she commanded. Linda placed her hands on her hips and stared at Marcus with the kind of look that could freeze water in the middle of summer. Linda began speaking to Marcus in a tone that was both demanding and condescending. She told him that, as a security guard, it was his job to make sure customers were treated properly. She insisted that he should force the customer service desk to accept her return, even though it was clearly outside the store policy time limit. Linda acted like Marcus worked for her personally rather than for the shopping center. Marcus listened patiently to Linda's demands without interrupting her or showing any emotion on his face. He had dealt with difficult people many times before and knew that staying calm was the most important thing he could do. His training had taught him never to escalate a situation by responding with anger or frustration, even when customers were being unreasonable. Other shoppers continued to gather at a safe distance to watch the confrontation. Some people shook their heads in disapproval at Linda's behavior. A few teenagers started taking out their phones to record the incident, but Marcus politely asked them to put their devices away. He did not want the situation to become a social media spectacle that would embarrass anyone involved. Linda's demands became more and more outrageous as she warmed up to her subject. She seemed to enjoy having an audience and began performing for the growing crowd of observers. But she had no idea that she was about to meet someone who would not be intimidated by her wealth status or aggressive behavior. Marcus had dealt with much worse situations than this, and he was prepared to handle whatever came next with professional grace and dignity. Linda stepped closer to Marcus until she was standing just 2 feet away from him. She tilted her head back and looked up at his face with a mixture of anger and arrogance. Her expensive perfume filled the air between them, but it could not hide the ugliness of her attitude. Linda seemed to believe that her wealth and social status gave her the right to treat working people however she pleased. Without any warning, Linda suddenly demanded that Marcus smile at her. She said that as a security guard working in customer service, it was his job to make shoppers feel welcome and happy. Linda insisted that Marcus should be grinning from ear to ear whenever he looked at her. She acted like his facial expressions were something she could purchase and control, just like everything else in her privileged life. Marcus maintained his calm professional demeanor and did not change his expression. He had a naturally serious face when he was working because security was a serious job. Smiling all the time would not help him watch for shoplifters or handle emergency situations. But Linda did not understand or care about the realities of his work responsibilities. When Marcus did not immediately break into a huge smile, Linda became even more frustrated and angry. She raised her voice and repeated her demand more forcefully. Linda told Marcus that she was a very important customer who deserved to be treated with special respect and attention. She said that his failure to smile at her was a sign of poor customer service that reflected badly on the entire shopping center. But Linda was just getting started with her impossible demands. She pointed toward different areas of the mall and ordered Marcus to personally escort her to every single store manager in the entire shopping center. Linda wanted Marcus to force each manager to override their individual store policies just to make her happy. She seemed to think that a security guard had magical powers to change return policies and store rules whenever a customer complained loudly enough. Linda then demanded that Marcus apologize to her on behalf of everyone who worked at Westfield Shopping Plaza. She wanted him to say sorry for wasting her valuable time and for not giving her the special treatment she believed she deserved. Linda acted like the entire mall existed only to serve her personal needs and desires. The growing crowd of shoppers watched in amazement as Linda continued making her ridiculous demands. Some people looked shocked at her behavior, while others seemed entertained by the drama. A few elderly customers shook their heads sadly as they remembered when people treated each other with more respect and courtesy. Linda seemed to think that Marcus was personally responsible for every aspect of her shopping experience. She blamed him for the store return policy, even though he had nothing to do with creating or enforcing those rules. Linda acted like Marcus could wave a magic wand and make all of her problems disappear instantly. The angry woman continued pacing back and forth in front of Marcus while making her demands. Her high heels clicked against the floor like an angry woodpecker hammering on a tree. Linda gestured dramatically with her hands and raised her voice so loud that people on the second floor of the mall could probably hear every word she was saying. Marcus stood perfectly still during Linda's entire performance. He kept his hands clasped behind his back in a professional stance and maintained eye contact without staring. His calm presence was a stark contrast to Linda's wild emotional outburst. Other shoppers began to notice the difference between the professional security guard and the out-of-control customer. Linda demanded that Marcus guarantee her satisfaction with every future visit to the mall. She wanted him to promise that she would never have to wait in line, never have trouble returning items, and never encounter any store policies that inconvenienced her in any way. Linda seemed to believe that the entire shopping center should be redesigned around her personal preferences and schedule. As Linda's demands became more and more unreasonable, the crowd of observers grew larger. Store employees began emerging from their shops to see what all the commotion was about. The situation was reaching a turning point where Marcus would need to respond to Linda's outrageous behavior. Everyone waited to see how the professional security guard would handle this impossible customer who seemed to think the whole world should revolve around her selfish desires. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal the true character of both people involved in this dramatic scene. Marcus had listened patiently to Linda's entire outrageous performance without saying a single word. He allowed her to finish all of her impossible demands and ridiculous complaints before he opened his mouth to respond. This was part of his professional training. Let angry customers vent their frustrations completely before trying to address their concerns. Sometimes people just needed to be heard even when they were being unreasonable. When Linda finally paused to catch her breath, Marcus spoke in a calm, measured tone that showed years of experience dealing with difficult situations. His voice was steady and controlled without any hint of anger or frustration. Marcus had learned long ago that responding to aggression with more aggression only made problems worse. The key to handling conflicts was to remain professional, no matter how badly other people behaved. Marcus began by acknowledging that he could see Linda was upset and frustrated with her shopping experience. He did not dismiss her feelings or tell her she was wrong to be angry. Instead, he validated her emotions while preparing to set appropriate boundaries about what he could and could not do to help her situation. Then Marcus carefully explained his actual role as a security guard at Westfield Shopping Plaza. He told Linda that his primary responsibility was to ensure the safety and security of all shoppers and employees. Marcus was trained to handle emergencies, respond to medical situations, prevent theft, and maintain order throughout the shopping center. His job was not to override individual store policies or force employees to break their company rules. Marcus explained that each store in the mall was an independent business with its own management structure and policies. He had no authority to tell store managers how to run their businesses or what exceptions they should make for customers. The security department and the individual retail stores operated separately, even though they were all located in the same building. Linda listened to Marcus with growing frustration as she realized that he was not going to give her what she wanted. Her face remained red and angry, but she seemed surprised by his calm, professional manner. Most people either got angry back at her or gave in to her demands just to make her go away. Marcus was doing neither of those things. Marcus offered to radio for the mall general manager when that person became available later in the day. He suggested that Linda could file a formal complaint through the proper channels if she felt that any store had treated her unfairly. Marcus also mentioned that most stores had corporate customer service numbers that customers could call to discuss policy concerns with higher-level management. Throughout his response, Marcus never raised his voice or showed any sign of irritation. He maintained eye contact with Linda and spoke to her with the same respect he would show to any other customer. Marcus treated her like a human being worthy of dignity, even though her behavior had been rude and demanding. This professional approach was something he had developed over 15 years of dealing with all kinds of people in stressful situations. The crowd of shoppers who had gathered to watch the confrontation began nodding their heads in approval of Marcus's response. They could see the clear difference between his professional behavior and Linda's childish tantrum. Several people whispered to each other about how impressed they were with the security guard's patience and composure. Marcus also gently addressed Linda's demand that he smile at her on command. He explained that while he always tried to be helpful and courteous, his facial expressions were not something that customers could order like items from a menu. Marcus said that genuine respect between people had to be mutual and could not be forced or demanded. Linda seemed taken aback by Marcus's reasonable response. She had expected him to either get angry and argue with her or to cave in and give her everything she wanted. Instead, he was treating her like an adult while firmly establishing appropriate boundaries. This was not the reaction she was used to getting from service workers. Marcus concluded his response by offering to help Linda find the appropriate resources for addressing her return policy concern. He remained respectful and professional, while making it clear that he would not be intimidated by her aggressive behavior or unreasonable demands. Marcus had shown the watching crowd exactly how a professional should handle a difficult situation with grace and dignity. The stage was now set for Linda to decide how she would respond to Marcus's reasonable and professional approach to her unreasonable behavior. As Linda's voice continued to echo through the corridors of Westfield Shopping Plaza, more and more people began gathering to witness the unfolding drama. What had started as a simple customer service complaint was now turning into a full-scale public spectacle that was drawing attention from throughout the entire mall. The confrontation between Linda and Marcus was becoming the most interesting thing happening that Tuesday morning. Shoppers who had been browsing in nearby stores began finding excuses to step outside and see what all the commotion was about. They pretended to window shop or check their phones while actually watching every move that Linda and Marcus made. Some people positioned themselves behind clothing racks or store displays where they could observe the situation without being too obvious about their curiosity. A group of teenage girls who had been shopping for clothes stopped their conversation mid-sentence when they heard Linda's loud voice demanding special treatment. They moved closer to the customer service area while whispering to each other about the crazy lady who was yelling at the security guard. The teenagers seemed entertained by the drama and kept nudging each other and pointing at Linda's dramatic gestures. Store employees from various shops throughout the mall began emerging from their workplaces to see what was causing such a disturbance. They stood in their doorways or stepped just outside their stores while pretending to organize displays or clean windows. Word was spreading quickly through the employee network that there was a difficult customer making the scene near the main entrance. An elderly couple who had been doing their morning mall walk stopped to rest on a nearby bench. They had a perfect view of the confrontation and watched with fascination as Linda continued her tirade. The husband shook his head in disapproval while his wife made quiet comments about how differently people behave nowadays compared to when they were young. Several mothers with small children in strollers slowed their walking pace as they passed by the customer service area. They tried to shield their children from witnessing Linda's inappropriate behavior while still satisfying their own curiosity about what was happening. Some of the mothers looked concerned about exposing their kids to such a negative example of adult behavior. A maintenance worker who had been replacing light bulbs in the corridor found himself with an unexpected audience for his routine work. He continued changing bulbs at a deliberately slow pace so he could listen to the entire conversation between Linda and Marcus. The maintenance worker had seen many difficult customers over the years, but Linda was definitely one of the worst. The growing crowd seemed to fuel Linda's performance rather than embarrass her into better behavior. She appeared to enjoy being the center of attention and began speaking even louder to make sure everyone could hear her complaints. Linda gestured more dramatically and repeated her demands with increased intensity, as if she was performing on a stage for paying customers. Some of the younger shoppers started taking out their cell phones to record the incident. They held their devices discreetly, hoping to capture Linda's outrageous behavior for their social media accounts. The possibility of the confrontation going viral on the internet added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation. Marcus noticed the phones being raised and politely but firmly requested that people put their recording devices away. He explained that filming other customers without their permission was not appropriate and could violate privacy rights. Most people complied with his request, though a few continued recording from more hidden positions. The crowd began forming unofficial sides in the conflict. Most observers clearly sympathized with Marcus and disapproved of Linda's rude behavior. People could see that the security guard was handling the situation professionally, while Linda was acting like a spoiled child who had never been told no in her entire life. A few brave souls in the audience began making quiet comments to each other about Linda's inappropriate conduct. They wondered aloud how someone could treat another human being so poorly over such a minor issue. The general consensus among the watchers was that Linda was completely out of line, and that Marcus deserved credit for maintaining his composure. The atmosphere in the mall corridor had completely changed from peaceful morning shopping to tense public drama. Everyone present could sense that something significant was building toward a climax. The confrontation between Linda and Marcus had become much more than a simple customer service dispute. It had turned into a test of character that would reveal the true nature of both people involved. The stage was set for whatever would happen next in this increasingly public battle between entitlement and professionalism. Just as Linda was reaching the peak of her theatrical performance and demanding that Marcus personally guarantee her satisfaction with every future mall visit, something completely unexpected happened. The growing crowd of observers suddenly parted to make way for a small elderly woman who was walking slowly with the help of a beautiful carved wooden cane. Her appearance was so different from Linda's dramatic display that everyone immediately turned their attention to this new arrival. Mrs. Eleanor Chen was 83 years old and had been a regular visitor to Westfield Shopping Plaza for over 20 years. She was a tiny woman who barely reached 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with the quiet dignity that comes from a lifetime of treating others with respect and kindness. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and she wore a simple but elegant dress that showed she took pride in her appearance without being flashy or expensive. Mrs. Chen had been quietly shopping for groceries when she heard Linda's loud voice echoing through the mall corridors. At first she had tried to ignore the disturbance and continue with her errands. But as Linda's demands became more outrageous and her treatment of Marcus became more disrespectful, Mrs. Chen felt compelled to take action. She could not stand by and watch a good man being treated so poorly. The elderly woman approached the confrontation with slow, deliberate steps. Her cane tapped softly against the marble floor, creating a gentle rhythm that was completely different from Linda's angry heel clicking. Everyone in the crowd watched with curiosity as Mrs. Chen made her way toward the center of the drama. There was something about her calm presence that commanded attention and respect. When Mrs. Chen reached the area where Linda and Marcus were standing, she stopped and looked directly at Linda with eyes that held decades of wisdom and experience. The elderly woman's expression was not angry or confrontational. Instead, she wore a gentle smile that seemed to radiate warmth and kindness. But there was also something firm and determined in her gaze that suggested she was not someone to be taken lightly. Mrs. Chen began speaking in a voice that was soft, but clear enough for everyone in the gathered crowd to hear. She addressed Linda directly, but her tone was polite and respectful, even though Linda had been behaving terribly. The elderly woman explained that she had been coming to this mall for many years and had never seen a security guard as helpful and professional as Marcus Johnson. Linda seemed shocked that someone was interrupting her performance. She was not used to being challenged by anyone, especially not by a small elderly woman who looked like somebody's sweet grandmother. Linda's mouth fell open, and she stood there speechless for the first time since her tantrum had begun. The crowd watched in fascination as this unexpected confrontation developed. Mrs. Chen continued speaking about Marcus's excellent character and professional service. She told the story of how Marcus had personally helped her when she had fallen in the mall parking lot 6 months earlier. Mrs. Chen described how Marcus had immediately called paramedics and stayed with her until her family arrived at the hospital. He had even visited her during her recovery to make sure she was doing well. The elderly woman's testimony began attracting murmurs of agreement from other people in the crowd. Several shoppers nodded their heads as they remembered their own positive experiences with Marcus over the years. A maintenance worker stepped forward and added that Marcus always treated everyone with equal respect, regardless of their job or social status. He said that Marcus was one of the kindest and most professional people he had ever worked with. A young mother with 2 small children spoke up to share how Marcus had helped find her lost son during a busy holiday weekend 2 years earlier. She described how Marcus had organized a search team and personally walked through every store until the child was found safely hiding under a clothing rack. The mother said that Marcus had calmed her fears and turned a terrifying situation into a positive experience. Store managers began emerging from their shops to add their own testimonials about Marcus's integrity and helpfulness. One manager described how Marcus had caught a shoplifter who had been stealing from multiple stores for weeks. Another manager praised Marcus for his gentle handling of confused elderly customers who sometimes became disoriented in the large shopping center. As more and more people began speaking up in defense of Marcus, Linda found herself surrounded by a chorus of voices praising the very man she had been attacking. The crowd's energy shifted from uncomfortable tension to warm appreciation for a security guard who had clearly earned the respect and admiration of everyone who knew him. Linda began to realize that she had seriously misjudged the situation and chosen the wrong target for her anger. As the testimonials about Marcus's excellent character continued to pour in from the gathered crowd, Linda's confident demeanor began to crumble like a sandcastle being washed away by ocean waves. Her face changed from angry red to embarrassed pink as she realized that everyone in the mall seemed to know and respect the security guard she had been attacking. What had started as her public performance was quickly turning into her public humiliation. More store employees continued to emerge from their shops to join the growing chorus of Marcus supporters. The manager of the jewelry store told everyone how Marcus had prevented a robbery attempt by spotting suspicious activity and quietly alerting the police. The bookstore owner described how Marcus always helped elderly customers carry heavy bags to their cars without being asked. Each news story painted a picture of a man who went far beyond his job requirements to help others. A group of teenagers who worked part-time at various mall stores began sharing their own experiences with Marcus. They explained how he had mentored them and taught them about workplace professionalism. One young man said that Marcus had helped him deal with a difficult customer situation by showing him how to remain calm and respectful, even when people were being rude. The teenagers clearly looked up to Marcus as a positive role model. Linda stood in the center of this growing circle of Marcus supporters, feeling more isolated and foolish with each passing minute. She had expected people to side with her because of her expensive clothes and demanding attitude. Instead, she discovered that respect and admiration had to be earned through consistent good behavior over time. Money and status meant nothing to people who valued character and integrity above material possessions. The mall's assistant manager, Mr. Rodriguez, arrived after hearing about the commotion from several store employees. He immediately approached Marcus and publicly thanked him for his many years of dedicated service to Westfield Shopping Plaza. Mr. Rodriguez announced to the entire crowd that Marcus had recently received a commendation from the mall ownership group for his outstanding performance and positive attitude. Mr. Rodriguez then addressed Linda directly but in a professional manner. He offered to personally review her return policy concern and promised to follow up with the appropriate store management. The assistant manager made it clear that while the mall wanted to satisfy customer concerns, they also expected customers to treat employees with basic respect and courtesy. His message was polite but firm. Several customers began approaching Marcus to shake his hand and thank him personally for his service. An elderly man described how Marcus had helped jump-start his car battery during a winter storm. A woman with disabilities praised Marcus for always holding doors open and helping her navigate the mall in her wheelchair. Each personal testimony further demonstrated the positive impact Marcus had made on countless lives. Linda watched this outpouring of support for Marcus with growing shame and embarrassment. She began to understand that her aggressive behavior had not only failed to get her what she wanted, but had also revealed her own poor character to everyone present. The crowd's sympathy was entirely with Marcus, while she stood alone and defenseless against the weight of public opinion. Some people in the crowd began looking at Linda with obvious disapproval and disappointment. They shook their heads sadly as they wondered how someone could treat another human being so poorly over such a minor issue. A few parents used Linda's behavior as a teaching moment for their children about how not to act in public situations. The mall's customer service representative, Sarah, who had been the original target of Linda's complaints, stepped forward to defend Marcus as well. She told the crowd how Marcus had helped train her when she first started working at the mall. Sarah described Marcus as patient, kind, and always willing to help new employees learn their jobs properly. Linda's expensive clothes and jewelry no longer impressed anyone in the crowd. People could see past her material possessions to the ugly attitude underneath. Her wealth meant nothing when measured against Marcus's wealth of good character and positive relationships. The contrast between Linda's selfishness and Marcus's selflessness was obvious to everyone present. As the testimonials continued, Linda began to realize that she was not just facing one security guard, but an entire community of people who respected and valued him. She had picked a fight with someone who had spent 15 years building a reputation for excellence and integrity. Now she stood exposed as a bully who thought money gave her the right to treat working people badly. The tables had completely turned, and Linda found herself on the wrong side of public opinion, with no way to gracefully exit the situation she had created. As Linda stood surrounded by the overwhelming evidence of Marcus's good character and the disapproval of the gathered crowd, she felt smaller and more ashamed than she had ever felt in her entire life. Her aggressive confidence had completely disappeared and been replaced by the uncomfortable realization that she had made a terrible mistake. The expensive clothes and jewelry that she thought made her superior to others now felt like costumes that could not hide her poor behavior. Linda's face had changed from angry red to embarrassed pink, and now to pale white, as the full impact of the situation hit her. She looked around at all the faces staring at her with disappointment and disapproval. For the first time in years, Linda was experiencing what it felt like to be publicly called out for treating another person badly. The feeling was not pleasant, and she did not know how to handle it. Marcus observed Linda's obvious distress and discomfort with the same professional calm he had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. Even though Linda had treated him terribly and tried to humiliate him in front of dozens of people, Marcus felt no satisfaction in seeing her suffer. His natural compassion and years of professional training kicked in as he recognized that the situation had gone far enough. Marcus stepped forward and raised his hand to get the attention of the crowd that had gathered to support him. The gesture was gentle but authoritative, and everyone immediately quieted down to listen to what he had to say. Marcus thanked all the people who had spoken up in his defense and expressed genuine appreciation for their kind words and support over the years. Then Marcus did something that surprised everyone, including Linda herself. He asked the crowd to please give Linda some space and privacy to collect herself. Marcus explained that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, even when they make mistakes or have bad moments. He reminded the gathered people that public humiliation was not something anyone should have to endure regardless of their behavior. Marcus approached Linda slowly and spoke to her in the same calm, respectful tone he had used throughout their entire interaction. He told her that he understood everyone has difficult days, and that sometimes frustration can cause people to act in ways they normally would not. Marcus offered to help her find the appropriate customer service resources for her return policy concern without any judgment or conditions attached. Linda looked up at Marcus with tears beginning to form in her eyes. She could not believe that this man was showing her kindness after the terrible way she had treated him. Linda had expected him to gloat over her public embarrassment, or at least to lecture her about her poor behavior. Instead, Marcus was treating her with the same respect he showed everyone else. The gathered crowd watched in amazement as Marcus demonstrated the highest level of professionalism and human decency. They had seen him remain calm under attack, but now they witnessed something even more impressive. Marcus was showing compassion to someone who had tried to hurt and humiliate him. This display of character impressed the observers even more than his earlier patience had. Linda's voice was barely above a whisper when she finally spoke. She apologized to Marcus for her behavior and admitted that she had been completely wrong to treat him the way she did. Linda said that her personal frustrations with other things in her life had caused her to take out her anger on an innocent person who was just trying to do his job. Her apology was sincere and heartfelt. Marcus accepted Linda's apology graciously and offered to personally escort her to the mall management office where she could discuss her return policy concern through proper channels. He explained that while he could not override store policies, he would make sure she was connected with the right people who might be able to help her situation. As the crowd began to disperse, many people stopped to shake Marcus's hand or pat him on the shoulder. They thanked him not just for his years of service, but for the lesson in human dignity he had just demonstrated. Parents used the opportunity to teach their children about treating others with respect and showing forgiveness, even when people make mistakes. Linda walked quietly beside Marcus toward the management office, feeling humbled by his kindness and ashamed of her earlier behavior. She had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between demanding respect and earning it. Marcus had shown her what true class and professionalism looked like, and she would never forget the experience. The mall slowly returned to its normal, peaceful atmosphere, but the story of how Marcus handled the difficult customer would be told and retold for years to come. It became a perfect example of how treating others with dignity and respect can transform even the most negative situations into opportunities for growth and understanding.